Okay, so today's DAF is really DAF Hey Amar Aleph. We're just going to start at the bottom of DAF Dalet Amar Beis. 4 lines in the bottom says Tanan. That's just the beginning of the Gemara. No, we'll continue into it. Gemara says Tanan. Hamei v'gam medinas hayom ve'enu yochel loim b'fanei nachtav b'fanei nachtav. Now, somebody who comes from medinas hayom brings a get from medinas hayom, and he does not have the ability to say b'fanei nachtav b'fanei nachtav. If there are Edim there, they should be able to be Mekayim the get b'chaysamov with the signatures. We asked, what is the case that he's not able to say? If we're talking about a case that he couldn't say it, the reason why he couldn't say it because he's a chayrish, he was deaf and mute. Chayrish bar suy gitahu is a chayrish, a person who has the ability to bring a get. We learned in the Mishnah, hakol kshem lahavi as a get chutz mi chayrish v'katan. Everyone is allowed to bring the get, meaning everyone is allowed to be a shliach for a get, except for chayrish v'katan, because they are not bar shlichus. V'yam Rabbi Yosef hacha mayaskina goin shenasin Allah keshupikeach v'lehisbek loimer b'fanei nachtav v'fanei nachtav ad shenescharish. What happened was he gave it to her while he was a regular person. And before he was able to say b'fanei nachtav b'fanei nachtav, he became deaf and mute, and he couldn't say it. So in such a case, what should you do? You should be miskayim b'chaysamov. You should with the signatures, you should verify it. Says the Gemara, l'Rava nichol l'Rabba kasha. According to Rava, that says that it's according to you just need kiyum edim. That's really good. But Rabbi holds that even though he agrees, as we learned yesterday, he agrees to Rava that Rabbi also requires you to have kiyum edim. That the reason why I say b'fanei nachtam is because of she'enim tzun l'kaimai. But he also says you need it for lishma. So what's Rabbi going to do with the lishma aspect of it? And so the Gemara, we're talking about a case and after people learned the halachas and they learned the halachas l'shma. So there was a time period in history when all of Klal Yisrael knew the halacha of GITTEN has to be l'shma, and therefore we were no longer concerned that someone may write something not l'shma. If so, Yachanami, a person who also who has the ability to say b'fanei nachtav b'fanei nachtam, he also should no longer be required to say b'fanei nachtav b'fanei nachtam, because we're already talking about a case of after they already know the halachas. And to the Gemara, we are concerned that at a later date we might revert back to the original problem of people not knowing the halachas, and therefore we continue the gezerah of requiring people shlichim to say b'fanei nachtav, in order that if at a later point people don't know the halachas, they will still have in place this gezerah and it will still be gone. If there's this gezerah that it might revert back to the original problem, so even a person who becomes a chayrish in the middle, we should also still require him to say it. Meaning, why are we letting him off the hook over here? And so the Gemara, it is a not common occurrence that somebody should immediately after giving a get should become a nischarish. He becomes a chayrish. And a milsa, which is not shliach, is not the Rabbanan we're not geyser on. Now, Taisus on Beis says that the time period for saying b'fanei nachtam is immediately after giving the get. It has to be right after nesina. Taisus is mistapik. He is not sure if while they're asukum b'is and inyan, while they're still busy with the get process, if you could still say b'fanei nachtam, but definitely has to be within a very short time period. So such a time period that a guy is completely with it, and he gives the get, and a second later he becomes deaf and mute. It's a very uncommon case. As the Gemara, a case of a lady bringing her own get. The Tanan we learned in the Mishnah, the case of a lady bringing her own get. So the case we learned about, talked about this case already, where a lady becomes her own shliach to bring the get. The Baal gives her a get and says that the get will not take into effect until you get to the Bezdin in whatever city you're going to, and that's where the get will take effect. So we're not talking about when a lady is a shliach for somebody else. We're talking about when a lady is a shliach for her own get. So that's a very not common occurrence. So, and still, the halacha is that she is required to say b'fanei nachtam. So you see that even in not common cases, we require them. And so the Gemara shel techalik b'shlichus. In order to not differentiate between the different kinds of shluchim, we require them to as a blanket rule, to say b'fanei nachtam. If you're going to say that we don't want to differentiate between the different kind of people who bring a get, the husband himself should also be required to say it. Allah Tanya, why do we learn in a brisa? Who a Baal himself who brings the get is not required to say b'fanei nachtam. And says the Gemara, why did we require the shluchim to say b'fanei nachtam? We were concerned that the Baal will come and passel the get. Now he's coming and bringing the get himself. He's going to come at a later point and challenge it. He's coming to challenge it because he just wants to make trouble. So we're not concerned about such case. Therefore, we did not require of the Baal to say b'fanei nachtam. Says the Gemara, Tashma, the boy minei Shmuel merav Huna. Shmuel asked Rav Huna, Shnayim shehevi get mimdinas hayam tzrichen sheyayimru b'fanei nachtam oy ein tzrichen. Two people, two shluchim together, they are bringing a get. So talking about a case where the two people are actually both the shluchim. It's not one guy's a shliach and one guy is just tagging along. Both of them are the shliach and both of them have to give over the get. They both together become the yad of the Baal. So will they be required to say b'faneinu nechtav or b'faneinu nechtam? Or they're not required to?
The third possibility is only one has to do it. So
well,
you see that one, we're only samech on, we only need one to do it. So we could say, why are you looking at them as a unit?
Because they're both shluchim. That's the thing, it's not one's tag along.
If I'm a shliach for this get, regardless of whether this guy wants to say it or not say it.
Someone said it?
Yeah.
I hear the question. I would say that since if we require a shliach to say it, it's not that it has to be said. It's the requirement of the shliach to say it. And since
if the shliach shows up, in other words, it doesn't matter how many shluchim show up. 5 shluchim show up, they all have to say it.
You're right. That's what at least the Gemara is assuming. Right. I hear your question. I don't have a reason why, but I assume just because the requirement was on shluchim, and since they are shluchim, they're required. Amarlei in tzrichen. Amarlei ain't tzrichen. They're not required to say it. Why not? Uma ilu yaimru b'fneinu girsha milei mahamni. If they would have both come to Bez and said, we know that this lady is divorced, they would both be believed. So if they would be believed in such a case, so therefore they would believe to bring a get, and they have the nemanis that the get is a true get and it's a kosher get, and it's like a migusvar. Ask the Gemara, according to Rava, that only requires you to validate it, so it's validated. According to Rabbi, but since Rabbi also has the requirement of Lishma, where do you have the Shema here? And so the Gemara follows the same format as the last Gemara. The case is talking about after they already learned the halachas, so we're no longer concerned about Lishma. If we're no longer concerned about it, Chad Nami, a single shliach should also not be required to say b'fanei nachtam. And so the Gemara we're concerned that it may come later point that people are going to forget the halacha. If so the two to aid them together should also be required to say b'fanei nachtam. And so the Gemara, two people who bring the get it's not a common occurrence. And a milsa which is not common, the Rabbanon will not geyser on. Ask the Gemara, we know that a lady, if she brings her own get, we do require her to say b'fanei nachtam. And so the Gemara, we don't want to differentiate between the two shluchim. A Baal should also be required to say b'fanei nachtam. That we say a Baal is not required to say b'fanei nachtam. As the Gemara, why did we require the Baal to say a regular shliach to say b'fanei nachtam? Maybe the Baal is going to come at a later date and challenge the validity of the shtar. Now that he's coming with the shtar himself, is he going to challenge it? And as Taisus points out, that even though there is a blanket rule against all shluchim, 2 Eidim don't fall under that blanket rule because it's clear differentiation of 2 and 1. It's only Taisus says that it's only b'shlichus the chad gazrinon, chad le'shchiach. What do we do? But when it's 2, we're not geyser against 2. So that's why, even though
that's not what the Gemara said. The Gemara says it's an unusual occurrence.
Yeah, but then the Gemara says that's Isha, and then we said, the Gemara said shlit chalak b'shlichus. Gemara says like techalek b'shlichus, right? We said even though it's not a common occurrence, we said but like techalek b'shlichus. So what do you do with that answer? So like techalek b'shlichus, we could say 2 is not the same kind of case as 1. Says the Gemara, Tashma, Hamevi get me Medinas Hayam, v'nasnu law. If someone brings a get from Medinas Hayam and he gives it to the lady, he did not say if they could validate it through the signatures, it's a kosher get. If not, it's possible. So we said, what's the reason for this? The only reason why we created this whole requirement of saying is in order to get ourselves out of problems. We wanted to make it easier for her to have the get in Mekuyim, because we allow her to validate the shtar prior to the Baal comes, and we validate, since we require the shliach to say that validates the shtar at this point. Right? So therefore, if the Baal would come at a later date, we would no longer listen to his challenge in the shtar. We don't listen to it anymore. So the Rabbanan required a validation of the shtar prior to any problems crop up. But over here, we're already in a situation we're not going to use that the requirement of the Rabbanan's din, and we're not going to use it against her now to make her puzzle and make her get divorced, and possible to get. So therefore, you could just use Eidim and then you'll be fine. L'Rava Nichal, l'Rava Kasha. L'Rava, it's good, but Rabba's Kasha, because very nice you can validate it through Eidim, but at the end of the day, you still have no Kiyum of L'Shma. And it's the Gemara, we're talking about a case after they already knew the halachas. Ask the Gemara, what happened to the problem of the Gezerah that you may revert to the original problem that people won't know the halachas? So what do you do about that? We still require you to say that. And so the Gemara Kishani says, we're talking about a case that she already got married. So since she already got married, because of the chashash that we may revert to the original problem of people not knowing halachos, we're not going to require her to get divorced, and we will leave the lady to be married as long as we were mekayim b'chaysamav. If the case is that she already got married, and that's why we're allowed to stay married, why did the Gemara use why did the Brisa say had to have to do with Chomer and a Kula, the fact that we did it only for a Kula? It should have talked about Kushnisis. The Gemara says, why did we say the reason was because it had to do with being lenient to her or being stringent on her? The reason is because she got married, and that's why we're allowing you to just validate it through Adam and validate the signatures. And so the Gemara, this is what the Brisa really means. If you want to say what we should do is we should be machmir on her and v'lifka and make her get divorced. For that, with the only requirement of saying the was only to get to make it easier for her. We're not trying to make problems for her. So if you can make her get divorced based on this requirement that we gave them to make it easier for her, that's making her more problems. So therefore, we're just going to allow her. Time of my, why did we require her to say before nachtam? The only reason we did it is so we shouldn't come out to a later point where the Baal is going to be ma'ar on it. At this point right now, the Baal is not coming here. He's not here. He's not saying anything. So why should we go and sort of speak up for the Baal and say maybe it's puzzle? Why should we do anything about it? So no one's being ma'ar. We're not going to require the b'far nachtam. But since she's getting married, as long as you validate it through signatures, it'll be fine. Now, just to point out, the Rabbanan were mechayev you to validate the shtar through b'far nachtam prior to any challenges of the Baal. That kiyum is a kiyum de Rabbanan. The Rabbanan required it. Now, once the Rabbanan gave her this din and they validated it to Rabbanan, even if the Baal would come at a later date and challenge it, it's a kiyum. But if no one validated it before, and the Baal challenges it, and this is true with all shtarais, that if once someone challenges it, the Baal shtar challenges the validity of it, the kiyum that's required at that point is the kiyum deraisa. It's not a derabanan anymore. It's a deraisa kiyum. And the nafkaminas in deraisa, and we'll see later in the Gemara, it will really come up what happens there. But it's a kiyum deraisa. So prior to the Baal challenging it, it's only derabanan. The Rabbanan required you to validate it. Once the Baal challenges it, it becomes deraisa. But if it was validated, D'Rabbanan, meaning prior to the challenge, so once the Baal challenges it, then we don't listen to it anymore. It's sufficient, and it is validated.
So you're saying when she gets married, it's as if it was validated.
Only no, it was validated. What do you mean?
She gets remarried.
At what point did the Baal challenge it yet?
He didn't challenge it.
Yeah, so right.
It's as if it was validated, even though he didn't, because he can't come later. He can't come later after she's remarried and then challenge it.
Well, just by the virtue that she got married, you mean?
Yeah.
That's not sufficient. There's no validation to the shtar there.
So then why does it make a difference whether she got remarried and he always can come later?
The point. Well, we're requiring them to be Mekayim b'chasamav. The Gemara says that we're requiring her to be Mekayim b'chasamav. But the only reason why we're not making her divorced, or we're not requiring them to find nachtav, and it's sufficient just to validate it, is because she already got married.
But he could still come later.
No, he can't, because then we have kiyum b'chasamav. Now we have Adam that we're Mekayim it. The Adam Mekayim, that's a direct. That's
the Adam Mekayim, the get.
The signatures. Well, that's the get. Really.
So you're saying when she got remarried, someone came and validated the divorce.
That's happened. We're allowing that was the kasha of the Gemara.
I thought he got remarried and there was no one validated it. But once you got married, that was a testimonial. He had his opportunity. He didn't come and validate it, and therefore he can't come later.
Sorry, right? No, so that's not it. No, the only difference that once she got married is that we're not requiring her to say b'fanei nachtav v'nachtav. Meaning, what happened? Usually we require b'fanei nachtav v'nachtav l'shma. So the Gemara says, well, this achar shalamdu, they already learned, right? So the Gemara says, yeah, but still we have the problem that we're afraid, we're concerned that it might revert to the original problem. So even so, we still require b'fanei nachtav v'nachtav. So why are we not requiring it over here? Meaning, why are we not requiring it over here? We're allowing, as the Rabbi said, that we're allowing just to be Mekayim b'chasamav. Right. We're allowing that. So when it says no, because she got married already. So once she got married, so then we're not going to require her, based on the gzeira, that we're afraid that it might revert to the original problem, we're not going to require her to get divorced and such in that case we'll drop the gzeira, and you don't need to do b'fanei nachtav v'nachtav l'shma, and you have to be mekayim b'chasamav because of maybe it's mezuyah for to have a kiyum. That you still require.
Yeah, but it didn't say that in here. It didn't say that they validated the signatures.
Tashma, maybe get medina sayam v'nasan law v'loy amar b'fanei nachtav v'nachtav im niskayim b'chasamav kasher. That's the thing b'chayim b'chasamav. Maybe I was going too fast over there.
Okay.
Sorry.
That was a missing piece.
Yeah, okay.
That's fine.
According to Dr. Blau's question, if he comes and she wasn't, and it was not Mekayim before her, then she can accuse her of being an Ashes.
Right, and the Vlad, yes.
Right,
and that's where Meir holds. Well, the truth is, Minatayra the get is really kosher. Right?
Well,
and Minatayra,
he could
challenge it,
yeah.
and then we will have a problem.
Right.
And then we'll have to validate it. Right. Sure, right.
If you find out later, if she remarries and you find out afterwards that the get really wasn't kosher, she has to get divorced, right?
Well, she was never married. She's a children of Mamzerim. She doesn't have to get divorced from the second guy. If the get was not a get, then it's not a.
And the marriage was never married.
The marriage was right. The second marriage was never married.
How can you make any kind of assumptions that it's okay? You got to be 1,000% sure. I mean, if there's a doubt, even a masha, you can't say okay. We can assume that it was okay, but you can't assume anything.
Well, the Torah allows us to assume things, meaning in certain.
But very well, the Torah. But you're the person that has the problem, and your kids. They give you a green light to marry, but at the end of the day, your kids can be mamzer.
Right. So you want to make sure that lady listen by Yibum by we're learning Yivamis, right? Yeah. The lady we say Daika Mitzvah that she checks out because she's the one that's gonna have the problem at the end of the day. So we might allow her, but we're relying on her. Yeah. Her checking out and her detective work to find out if the story is really true.
Yeah.
Now, says the Gemara. The machlokes that we had of Rava and Rabba of whether the requirements for Lishmar Edom between Lekaimai is the same machlokes of the Rabbi Yechon and Mishu ben Levi. Chad Amar Lefish Ein Bekim Lishmar, v'Chad Amar Lefish Ein Edom between Lekaimai. One man says the reason is because of Lishma. One man says because of Ein Edom between Lekaimai. To stylus being a raya, the Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who the Amar lefish ein bekim l'shma. Or being a raya, the Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was the man the Amar who required it because of ein bekim l'shma. Rabbi Shimon ben Abba, I see Gittel Kamed Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Shimon ben Abba was a shliach. He brought a get with him from Medina Sayyam, and before he went to actually give it to the lady, he went to ask Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi a question: what he's required to do. And he asked him, am I required to say or not? You're not required. Why? We only said the only time we required the shliach to say was in the earlier generations when they didn't know the halachas of lishma. But in the later generations, the bekim lishma, they didn't require them because they already knew the halachas and we didn't require them to say b'fai nechta. Says the Gemara Testayim, that is a raya. The Rabbi Shimon ben Levi is the man the Omar of Lishma. The Tizbara, how could Rabbi Shimon ben Levi have said that? Even Rabba that says the reasons for Lishma, he agrees to Rava and still requires them because of the reasons of Ein Edom Mitzvim L'Kaimai. So very nice. At this point we know the halachas, but even Rabba agrees that you need to do it for Mitzvim L'Kaimai. We also said that even if at this point people know the halachas, there's still the concern that at a later point people may forget the halachas, and then we're going to be stuck again. So we continue the gezerah. So what does it help you? Why shouldn't he be required to say it? Ella Reb Shimon ben Abba Inish Achrina have a bad day. He had another shliach with him. The reason why we didn't talk about him in the story was because of Kvayder Shimon. He was such a chashuv person, so the other person was a regular, simple person. So therefore, we only said there was one person. But really, there was two people. And since there's two people, as we learned in Amman Aleph, in a case when there's two shluchim bringing a get, that case, so first of all, you have no problem of Mitzuyim L'Kaimai because the two people there are already Mekayim it. And there's no problem of the Gezerah Shemayachzer Dav L'Kukulai, that it may revert to the original problem because the Muslim L'Shicha and Muslim Says the Gemara, Itmar, how many people is the shliach required to say this and give the get? One Ma'amar says you only need two people there, and one Ma'amar says you need three people there. Tistayim will bring a raya to Rabbi Yochanan who the Amar b'fnei Shnayim. Rabbi Yochanan was the Amar who said that you required it in front of two people. The Ravin bar Rav Chizda, I see Gittel Kamed Rav Yochanan. Ravin bar Rav Chizda was a shliach, and he brought this get in front of Rav Yochanan. The Amar Lei, and Rav Yochanan told him, Zil Havla ba'api trei. Go bring it in front. Go give it to the lady while there are two people watching. Ve'emalahu b'fai nechtam, and tell and say there b'fai nechtam. Tistayim. So that is a raya. The Rabbi Yochanan was the man that only requires two people watching. Let us say that the machlekes of Rabbi Yochanan and Rechnina of whether we require two people there or whether we require three people there is demand Amar b'fnei Shnayim, demand Amar that requires only two people there. The reason why it requires two people there is because people don't know the halachas of l'shma, and therefore you just need to tell us the halachas of l'shma, and therefore two people are sufficient to be able to know when these people say v'nechtam, it's sufficient to them to say, okay, well we know he said it that was l'shma, so we know this to be true now at this point. We have this information that it was l'shma. The mandam that requires three people there, they required because it's ein edom mitzvim l'kaimai. And edom mitzvim l'kaimai, the requirement was that it needs to be validated. The actual star needs to be validated, and that requires a bezdin. The validation of a star requires a bezdin. So three people is a bezdin. V'tizbra asked the Gemara a question. The Gemara earlier on top of the Amud, where is the Machlekes? Rabbi Yochanan and Yeshua ben Levi, and the Machlekes was whether or not the reason is l'shma or of Edom Mitzvim L'Kaimai, and we said over there that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is the man the Amar of Bekin l'shma, right? So it comes out Rabbi Yochanan, his bar plukta, his Rabbi Yochanan goes because of l'shma of l'shma, of Edom Mitzvim L'Kaimai. He says, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Amar Lafish Ein Bekin l'shma. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was the opinion that's of l'shma. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Lafish Ein Mitzvim L'Kaimai. And Rabbi Yochanan is of the opinion then that the reason Rabbi Yochanan holds is because of Ein Mitzvim L'Kaimai. He needs kiyum shtar. V'hacha hechi ka'amar Rabbi Yochanan b'fnei Shnayim. So if you say that Rabbi Yochanan, the same Rabbi Yochanan over here, how could Rabbi Yochanan only require two? If Rabbi Yochanan, we're saying from the from the earlier machlekes, it came out that Rabbi Yochanan is the man Amar that holds a Mitzvah L'Kaimai. So how could Rabbi Yochanan over here require only two? If for Mitzvah L'Kaimai, you need to have three. You should have a bezdin. You need a bezdin. You need three. So how could Rabbi Yochanan hold over here two? V'oid harabba islay de Rava. We already said that Rabba agrees to Rava. So even the man Amar of Mishma should also require three, based on the reasons that he needs to have a bezdin for kiyum, for the kiyum l'shtar. So how could anybody hold two? Really, everybody agrees that you need Edom Mitzvim L'Kaimai. So why is there a machlekes about two or three? Both of them should require three. The machlekes of whether or not a shliach could become an aid, or an aid could become a dayan k'mifli. Now, what these halachas are is, there's a machlekes in the Gemara whether or not a shliach has the ability to become the aid on the event that's happening. Meaning that if somebody makes a shliach to be mekadosh a lady, to go mekadosh a lady, so he is the shliach, and he now goes, finds a lady as mekadosh her. So how many people are required to watch that event of this guy giving over the kedushin? Do we need two, like a regular kedushin, or is one sufficient? Because the person, the actual shliach, who's doing this ma'aseh kedushin, could suffice as the second aid because he's watching it. Or do we say no? Since he's a shliach of the Baal, he's like shluchas shashim kamaisai. He's like the Baal, so he's a Baal davar. He's no longer there. So that's a machlekes in the Gemara. There's a second. The Gemara discusses a second scenario where the aid, one of the dayanim, know the aidus himself. So he wants to say the Eidus, and then he wants to become part of the Eid, part of the Bezdin. So it means one of the Eidus, three people here, one person knows the Eidus, he'll get up, he'll say the Eidus to the other two people, then he'll sit himself down, and now they can paskin, because one person knows the knowledge because he knows the knowledge himself, and two people heard the knowledge, heard the Eidus. So now they want to paskin halacha based on this thing. So that's the shayla in the Gemara. So the maskanas of the Gemara is that in Dinei D'Oraisa, Eidus of D'Oraisa, of Din Torah, Dinim D'Oraisa, when the Bezdin is passing something of that requires an Eidus D'Oraisa, they can't do that. The aid can't do that, which means like Kiddush HaChodesh. You have a Mishnah by when they see the Levana, let's say one of the guys saw the Levana, he can't sit the other two guys down and say the Eidus to them, and then sit himself down and make Kiddush HaChodesh, right? So that's the din deraisa or din mominus. Those are din deraisa. So then you need to have other edim, and there's a lot of Rishonim do different reasons. One reason is because it might just be a drash, exeres a kosov. A reason is because it says the omdu shnei anoshim has to stand in front of them. So you can't. If he's sitting, then you need that a mesira of edus to a bezdin. Mm-hmm. Part of the mesira's edus to the bezdin. But Dina Derabanan, when it's only a court case of Derabanan, it's an aid as Derabanan, then we would allow an aid to be part of the Bezdin. So over here in our case, right, it's really a Derabanan, because we said before that an aidus prior to the Baal's challenging of the validity of the shtar, it's really an aidus Derabanan. So that's what our case really is, in Derabanan. So the Gemara is going to ask on it that we said that we can't have this as a machlekes of Eid Nasa Dayan because our case is a case of Derabanan. And Derabanan, so the Gemara comes out that it is allowed to have an Eid Nasa Dayan. So the Gemara attempts to say that the machlekes with 2 or 3 is whether or not Eid Nasa Dayan. Or whether it's not, or whether not. I mean, the Mount Amr that requires 3 says Ein Eid Nasa Dayan, and therefore you require 3 because you need that guy is not sufficient, not going to help. When the Mount Amr requires 2, because the Eid could be part of the Dayanim. But the Gemara says that no, it's a Derabanan, so obviously that wasn't the case. Just to get that clear before we read the Gemara. Let's read the Gemara. We need Eidim to be Mekayim, and really you need a Bezdin. The machlekes is whether or not a shliach could become an aid or an aid could become a dayan. The Mandamer that only requires 2 because of a shliach nasa aid, the aid nasa dayan. He says that a shliach could become an aid and an aid could become a dayan. The Mandamer that says you need 3 because of a shliach nasa aid, the aid nasa dayan, and he does not allow an aid to become a dayan. Now the reason why both of them have to hold shliach nasa aid is because if you don't say hold, that's a machlekes in the Gemara, and if you don't hold shliach nasa aid, then you for sure won't hold aid nasa dayan. It's only once you hold shliach nasa aid, then you can go to the next step of whether an aid becomes a dayan. So now says the Gemara, We paskin, we come out that by a derabanan case, which our case is, that an aid is allowed to be a dayan. So both of them should allow you to use only 2. Why does one require you to use 3? Since a lady is kosher to bring a get, she could be a shliach for a get. It may come out that a lady will one time bring a get, and since people are used to always using the shliach as one of the people to be mekayim the get, so therefore they may come to rely on this lady. And there's never any point that we allow ladies to be part of a bezdin. There are certain times we allow ladies to be shluchim, we may allow ladies to be eidim, but a dayan, there are no ever times that we're allowed to do it. So even in a derabanan case, which this is, which we're allowing her to be an aid, we're never going to, even in a derabanan case, we can't allow her to become a dayan. So that's why that mandamar held that you require always 3 people to never run into that problem. They know that ladies can't be dayanim and they won't come to rely on it. So therefore he allows 2, and obviously in a case when you have a lady, he will also require 3. Tani can say to Rabbi Yochanan that we have a brisa that says like Rabbi Yochanan that only requires 2. Hamevi get medinas hayam. Somebody brings a get from medinas hayam. V'nosne law, and she gives it to her. V'loy amar law b'fanei nechtam. And he does not say b'fanei nechtam. Yoitzi v'avlad mamzer. She has to get divorced, and the child is a mamzer divrei Rav Meir. That is the opinion of Rav Meir. Chaim say the vlad is not a mamzer. And I think Rav Meir it's only mamzer derabanan, because min ha-Torah it's a kosher get, but it's only mamzer derabanan. So Kate said Yasa, what should you do? He should take it back from her. And he should go and give it back to her in front of 2 people. And he should say again the halachas of vaynechtam. So here this is where Taisa says the Aryai is that the vaynechtam has to be with a nesina. The actual giving, that's when it's got to be. It can't just be. He can't just say to her vaynechtam. It's got to be with a nesina.
If a guy gives a woman a get, and there's no edim at all, it's not a kosher get. In other words, he wants a divorce, right?
Right, I don't think so. I think there needs to be an asina, but just like kedushin.
Maybe they can do, they can validate it, but it's not good.
What do you mean?
Chaim maybe can say it's not a good get, but I'm saying if no one says from his intention and her intention it was a good get.
Right, but first of all, you need eidim.
So it's not legal. It's not a proper.
Well, that's actually a big machlekes acharinim. Like the Chazon says, whether or not the first nesina was a nesina and it's just the cham's gzeira, or it actually was no nesina and it's just a new nesina. As the Chazon has a big thing in there. But yeah, exactly what happens? That's already real acharinim shared. So then what we do, you take it back from the lady, you re-give it to the lady, and say b'fanei nechta.
So it works retroactively?
Well, what do you mean?
She already got married. She already has children.
Well, no. If according to a mayor, yeah. Right.
According to
yeah, according to Chaim, yeah.
Is it works retroactively?
It would cleanse the children?
Well, Chaim never holds the Vlad Mamzer. The mayor holds the Vlad as Mamzer. No, so according to a mayor, would not cleanse the children. According to a mayor, you're stuck. You're gone. According to the Chamas don't hold the Vlad as mamzer because Midaraisa she's really divorced. Yeah. So Din Rabbanan, but they're going to require you to
clarifying the situation.
Clarifying the situation to redo it.
That's why it works.
Right. That's what it works. Right. So it's not really kashering anybody. Yeah. Right. According to a mayor, the apostle, they're apostle. Yeah. According to the Chamim, they're not apostle, so you could do it. Now, according to a mayor, prior that she got remarried and there's any children over here, also she could do this. She can take it back from her and give it before she got married, or according to Chaim, even after she got married. That's the thing. As the Gemara, Meir Mishum Deloy Amar B'fanei Nechtam Yoitzi V'Vat Mamzer. Just because he didn't say at Tekanis Chachamim, and he didn't say B'fanei Nechtam, she has to get divorced, and the Vlad is a Mamzer. In Remeir L'Taimei the Amar of Meir, Damer of Hamnuna Mishmei the Ula. Hamnuna said in the name of Ula. Oimra Hayir Meir used to say, anyone who changes from the requirements that the Chacham required in Hilchas Gittin has to get divorced, and the Vlad is a mamzer. I was thinking there was very chaimer things on Gittin and exactly how people have to divorce, and if you change those, even if it's only D'Rabbanan, the Vlad Remeir holds the Vlad as a mamzer. Barhedia boi lasuya gite. Barhedia was about to become a shliach for a get, and he wanted to know what he has to be required to do to find out, in order to say b'fanei nechta v'fanei nechta. Also, l'kamei der Rav Achoy. He came to Rav Achoy. He was he knew a lot of Hilchos Gittin. He knew the halachas Gittin. Amar lei, so Rav Achoy told him, you have to stand there and watch every single letter as is written in order for you to say b'fanei nechta. Right? If you were not standing there at the time, then you can't say b'fanei nechta. Also, l'kamei der Ravasi. He went to Ravasi, and Ravasi told him, Amri lei, lo tzrichas. You don't have to stand there the whole time. If you're going to say, you maybe do it l'chumra, stand there and watch every single ice l'chumra, you're going to come out and call a laz on the other gittin. Meaning, if it's not really required, and you're going to be machmir and stand there in front of the gittin to watch it, that's going to be mitzvah laz on other gittin, because that's not really a requirement. So don't make a chumrah that's going to end up seemingly negating the other. And it's not, but it's going to imply that the other gittin are not kosher. Therefore, don't do that. So they don't tell him how much, but the Gemara doesn't say exactly how much. But assuming that they didn't require everything. Rabbi Bar Chana, I see Gita. Rabbi Bar Chana brought a get. Palga ichtav kamei or palga lo ichtav kamei. Part of it was written in front of him. Part of it was not written in front of him. Also, kamei de Rav Lazar. So he came to Rav Lazar and he asked him, "What should he do?" Amarlei, I feel like kasav by ela shita achas l'shma shuv ein etzarich. As long as you saw one line being written l'shma, that's fine, and you could say b'fanei nechta.
Which line?
It doesn't matter.
Any line. Doesn't matter.
He didn't say her name.
Anything. You learn. I was thinking the more even gets even more lenient. Anything. You saw anything. Because the point is over here, so we're saying that you have to know that this get was written l'shma. You don't really have to know that you're not a mashkiach over here. You're not a mashkiach in the get. That's not what you are. You're not kashering in the get. All you have to know that there was l'shma in this get, that the people were aware, and it was written lishma. As long as you're aware of that information, that's fine. Like when you say l'shem matzahs mitzvah, right? They're not constantly rolling the matzah l'shem matzahs mitzvah, l'shem matzahs mitzvah, l'shem matzahs mitzvah, right? They're not doing that. They say it once in the beginning, and it's l'shem matzahs mitzvah.
I wonder whether it should be at the beginning that he saw.
Oh, the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh, the beginning. I don't know that anyone says that it has to be specific at the beginning, but as long as you know, as long as you know that they are aware of this halacha, you're not.
The course of it, right?
The course of it, you know that. Meaning, they theoretically have to be said at the beginning. Yeah, that's true. But what the shliach's required to know, he may not have to know that information. He just has to know that the people who wrote it were aware of this halacha, and it was written lishma.
Right.
That's what we require of the shliach. We don't necessarily require the shliach to know that it was done exactly.
Whatever you witness, you presume the whole thing was of the same.
Right. That's what I assume. Right.
It's like going to open up the stove for you. As long as sometimes during the cooking it opens the stove, it's good.
Or for the shlakum? Oh, yes, I don't know the lachos b'shlakum. Rav Ashi Amar, afilu kan kulmasa v'kan megilta. Even if you only hear the sound of the quill writing out the words, v'kan megilta, and the parchment, the sound of parchment rustling, that is sufficient to know that it was written l'shma. Meaning, obviously, you only heard that writing, you know it's l'shma, and you heard he was busy with it. You know he obviously didn't pull it out of a stack of gittin he has written in there. Tani can say to Ravashi, we have a brayso that says like Ravashi, Hamevi get medinas hayam afilu hu bayis v'sofer ba'aliyah. Even if he is in the house and the sofer is upstairs, hu ba'aliyah v'sofer bayis, he's upstairs and the sofer is downstairs. Afilu nichnas v'yotze kol yom kuloi. Even if he's going in and out the whole day and he's not standing there the whole time, kosher. It's still going to be kosher. Ask the Gemara, hu b'bayis v'sofer ba'aliyah holoi kol chazilei. If the sofer is upstairs and he's downstairs in the waiting room, you didn't see anything. We have to, it means that we're talking about a case where he was able to hear the scratching of the quill or the sound of the parchment, and that would be sufficient for him to know that it was lishma.
So the sound of the quill sounds like the words kan.
Yeah, that's what Rashi says. Right.
Kan means what?
Kan. I don't know exactly how kan sounds. I don't know. Scratching sounds kan.
Yeah, but what does kan mean? I
think it's like an onomatopoeia.
It's supposed to sound like he's saying it. That he's saying it l'shma while he's writing it. Even if the sound of the quill sounds like it's the sofer saying the words kan, which somehow implies that it's lishma, then that's good enough.
That's how they explain it?
Yeah.
I thought Rashi just means it sounds like the sound of scratching sounds like kan.
And how does that? So how does that?
No, and you have to no.
So what does kan mean?
You
so therefore, it sounds like kan. All it means is he's writing it. How does he know that it means?
You also have to know lishma. You know he's doing lishma, and you know he's writing anything. That's what I assume. He knows lishma.
That's okay. Okay.
Right. The sound of the parchment moving, the sound of the scratching of the quill.
Okay, that's what I understand. The fact that you're hearing the sound, how does that prove anything?
Well, you know that he wrote Lishma, and you hear him writing it. You write it, so you know that he's writing what was Lishma.
I got it. Sorry, I got a little bit of problem with a lot of years ago when I took a course in toxicology, and
I think
the professor was legal in court all the time. He says you have to see, has to be sealed, etc., and there has to be a continuation all the way along the line for all evidence or anything, whatever. Now you're saying that somebody can be up in another room. What if the ball wants to do a shtick, and like made a pretend thing, and you didn't see the document? So how do they allow that?
Right. So the truth is, you're right. Meaning that if we really needed a real, edus that it was true, then it's not sufficient. The point is, it's a small chashash that something might not be lishma or something might not be written specifically there. So for that chashash derabanan, we allowed it to. That was sufficient. Meaning to be really upholding the court of law, theoretically, it wouldn't be enough. It's like a very funny, small thing. But since it was this small amount that we needed it, so that was sufficient to counteract that small amount.